views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of Bronxnet or the program underwriters.
Hey there, welcome to the Bronx Buzz. This is Bronxnet's program where we talk to Bronx journalists and writers and editors and videographers and photographers and give you a little insight as to what people are thinking and saying and talking about and what they have in the back of their minds as they put out stuff for us to absorb. And this evening we're thrilled we have two different editors. So it's Editor's Night on the Bronx Buzz. So we're going to start off on the telephone with my buddy Patrick Rocchio, the assignment editor at the Bronx Times Reporter. Nice to have you with us, Patrick.
Hi, nice to be with you, Gary.
It's always good. I know busy times at the paper. It's always busy at the paper. We do appreciate you taking a few minutes to talk to us.
Sure.
Lot of different things going on, things you've written about, things some of your colleagues have written about. Let's start off with this Shore Road thing. I mean, you're a City Island guy, so you know what's going on out there.
Sure.
And really all over the country, there's flooding. I mean, in a way, we've had it less than others. But there has been an ongoing dialogue about Shore Road and the areas around Pelham Bay Park that say, what, we can do something. So why don't you give us a little background about what's going on and what the possibilities are?
The roads in Pelham Bay Park, in particular Shore Road and also Orchard Beach Road, Park Drive, which is a smaller road between Orchard Beach and the City Island traffic circle, they're in bad shape. There is a lot of flooding on Shore Road, and there is a project in the works that's being designed as we speak to kind of address some of the issues on Shore Road. But basically what happens in the park is there are areas in the park that are pooling so much that
I guess the roads are hard to travel, and then of course.
I know. I'm sorry. Yes, the roads are hard to travel. Not only hard to travel, they are almost impossible to even stay on your side of the road in some cases during some storms.
So that becomes a real hazard.
A safety hazard, big time.
Now, is this a drainage problem or simply a problem that we have had, frankly, more rain? I mean, this was not a very pleasant spring, and you know that it's just one of those things. Or are we really looking at developing better drainage and other kinds of things around the roadways?
You know, Gary, this happens every year. This has been happening every year for decades. So I don't think it's a problem that, there. In some cases, maybe a storm drain is clogged up. But in most cases, they don't have the correct infrastructure in place to deal with the issues on these roadways. Like Shore Road, part of it is built below, at a very low elevation, so it floods easily. And in winter, that particular location gets iced over and cars skid. There's another part of Shore Road where water just pools after rainstorms and warmer weather, and causes accidents, or people literally driving onto, let's say, a pedestrian and bike path on their motorcycle to avoid going through a gigantic pool of water. There's an access road from the Hutchinson River Parkway to Bartow Circle in Pelham Bay Park that the left lane of the road coming off of the Hutch going towards the circle, invariably in rainstorms floods over and it's impossible to pass through. So you're basically down to one lane. Sometimes you're down to no lane because you really have to drive through drive through it.
Yeah, right.
Because the flooding gets so bad.
Here's the question. I mean, you're a veteran reporter, been around here and lived around here for a very long time. The way you just described it, it sounds to me like this becomes a very expensive infrastructure situation if you really want to correct it.
If they really want to do it right, they really have to invest the resources. And I know somebody in that article said, I think it was either Tommy or, I think it might have been Tommy Breen or one of the Breen brothers. I can't remember which one. They said, basically it's not the most exciting thing to invest in, but it is very important because if you don't have good road to travel on, you're more likely to get into an accident, or there's more likely to be, to damage your vehicle.
Right. There could be anything. Yeah, sure.
It could be anything. Anything could happen.
Yeah. As climate change takes greater hold, I mean, the chances of extreme weathers are greater. And it's, I don't want to say we're not going to get less, we're going to get more if we're going to get anything. So maybe it does need to be addressed.
That's what some people feel. I mean, there was a person in that story, Beverly Jones. She said that she's concerned that as climate change worsens, these issues are just going to get worse. So maybe now is the time to address them.
Right, right. Do you know? And I'm going to move on after this question. But do you know? Right. Is there legislative support? I mean, I guess it's DOTs. It would be city money, or is it out there? I guess that's Councilman Jonai's area or Richie Torres. I'm not sure exactly where.
I know there's funding for design for part of Shore Road to be redesigned, and it's in the design phase, and we should be getting the final design, preliminary design, I think, around the end of the summer, and then a final design towards the end of the year. At least that's the schedule for now. These things always change.
Right, of course.
Or can change at any time. So, right. So there is money for design. Not entirely sure about construction.
Yeah. Let me just jump in with this one. We hadn't talked about it beforehand. The Morris Park so-called road diet is on hold now. Do you have a sense of what the status is of that? Is there enough objection to have it really relooked at, or is it just a delay at this point?
Hard to say. I mean, I wrote a lot of the initial stories on the road diet.
Correct.
Another one of my colleagues has done the more recent work on it. So I'm going to kind of defer to him. This is Alex.
We'll bring Alex on here and I'll grill him. That's the way.
Yeah.
All right.
Listen, I think you're going to have to do that.
I do want to get to this 2800 Bruckner building, which has been bandied about for so long. This is where credibility comes in. What are they planning there? Will there be a treatment facility? Will it be managed properly, as many people are very concerned about? Or, as some are saying, it's not the kind of thing that the community needs to be concerned about. What's your sense of the plans and the future for 2800 Bruckner Boulevard? I
think that there is definitely a lot of grassroots activism, mostly opposed to this project. Council member Jonai, Assembly member Benedetto, and I'm going to give you a little preview here of the latest story. Senator Biaggi now as well are all saying this is not the appropriate location for this type of a treatment center. Part of the issue is that this is an office building that is in what is primarily a residential area. So it's really the only office building, and it got built through a special permission or special variance a few years back, and it's really the only office building in that immediate area, in those immediate blocks.
Right.
So people are concerned because there's a school just a block away,
Let me interject something, and we've had this. I mean, this is not the only neighborhood having this dialogue. There was one in Kingsbridge very recently. I think people are becoming, getting the realization that every neighborhood has a drug issue, and that unless we put in facilities, a way to treat people and address these things, it's only going to get worse. So, the question is, can you put a facility in a place where it can be managed so that people who do have difficult times and do have difficult issues don't infringe on the rights of others? And that is the fundamental question. Can it be done?
Correct.
And I don't know, do you have a sense and answer that, or is there a way to address that? Of course, then people don't trust developers who come in because they see it as easy money because it becomes government money and they can just get it,
Sure.
you know what I mean? It's that whole dynamic that makes it a very difficult dialogue.
I think that I don't think that in this particular case there's a strong level of trust in the particular provider at 2800 who has said who has made statements or saying that they want to develop this facility. As of a week ago, there was no official paperwork filed with Oasis, the state agency that manages this. So, that dialogue is possible. I think in this particular case,
Yeah,
go
ahead.
The people in the area, a lot of them, maybe not all of them, but many are vocal about it. That they just don't feel that this is the appropriate location for this type of treatment, and they are concerned also that it may turn into not just talk therapy, which would be one thing, but a different kind of treatment that would also involve,
methadone
drugs
or something.
People all,
yep.
Methadone, like that.
Patrick, you and I have just really tapped right into the crux of the issue, and that is a matter of trust. So if you create certain guidelines and then you get a developer or somebody who says, I'm going to adhere to those guidelines, but the track record in some cases is not that great for them to have done that in the past, then all of a sudden the community says, it doesn't matter what you say. You can't have a good dialogue. Patrick, this is the kind of thing that's going to go on, and we got to let you go. I know you have a very busy day over there at the Bronx Times, so I want you to say hello to all my buddies over there, and
okay.
we do appreciate your time this evening.
All right. Yeah, I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Patrick Rocchio, assignment editor at the Bronx Times. We're going to take a break, and then right here in this studio, we'll bring on another editor, and that is Joe Hirsch, who works down in the South Bronx at the Mott Haven Herald. Don't go away.
Sure, I look cute now, but when my owner lost his job, it was rough. I was living on the street, and one night, me and this Cocker Spaniel got into it so bad, I wound up looking like an ice cream cone. I cried a little bit, but thankfully I got rescued, so I'm running, I'm jumping, all back to my old self, and I'm ready to give unconditional love, even if you put a lampshade on my head.
It's not always easy being a dad.
Do you have panda asthma too? Does that run in the family? This is the home of the most priceless kung fu artifacts.
But when you make an effort,
Dad, we're not supposed to touch anything. Oh, sorry. Go along, son.
it's always worth it.
Whoa, master!
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
I am gonna get you. I'm gonna get you.
Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov to learn more.
You know what, guys? There's a lot of tree branches and dry brush over here. We should probably move the bonfire over there.
I'm guessing Smokey liked that idea.
Hey, it's Ava, and this is Tess from Vivo's Do It Yourselfie, where we recreate the hottest looks from today's biggest music videos.
After cleaning out our closet, we have a lot of clothes we don't wear anymore.
Like this old t-shirt.
It's not garbage, it's actually a brand new rug.
And to make it, all you need to do is cut, tie, and glue.
Cut the t-shirt into strips.
Tie the strips into knots.
And glue the knots to the bath mat. I love it. Give your garbage another life.
And recycle.
Hey, we're back with you in the Bronx Buzz. And as promised, Joe Hirsch, who is the editor. It is the Mott Haven Herald and the Hunts Point Express?
The Mott Haven Herald and the Hunts Point Express.
And the Hunt, I shortchanged Joe Hirsch. Nice to have you with us, Joe. Always great to have you with us. You know, so we just had a dialogue about a treatment facility being potentially landed in a community that doesn't want it. The whole idea of land use and who makes the decision of what goes where, we still haven't figured it out. Because in your neighborhood, and you've written about it extensively, the whole notion of the Rikers replacement jail over there on Concord Avenue. Every story that comes out says, another community group says, we don't want it, we don't want it, we don't want it, but the plan seems to be moving forward. Why don't you give us an update?
Talking specifically about the jail then, right, Gary?
Sure.
So in the case of, it was about a year and a half ago, a little more than a year ago, the mayor announced that he wanted to shut down Rikers, which of course is popular with everyone around the city.
Yeah, it was kind of a group of people who advocated for shutting down Rikers.
That's right, and it was really the former speaker, Melissa Mark Viverito, who represented our neighborhood, Mott Haven was half of her district along with East Harlem, and she was the first one who popularized the theme before it went to a judicial commission, and the study was done, and it was decided, and de Blasio a year and a half or so ago announced that it was going to happen. He was going to shut down Rikers within a few years and build much smaller, humane, modern, borough-based facilities. In the case of Brooklyn, Queens, and Manhattan, it really was, it's obviously still contentious, but not as contentious because those jails are going to be built on existing facilities. In the case of the Bronx, nothing could be further from the truth. In the Bronx, it is going on an entirely new site that has been a 4.5-acre toe pound for the NYPD, just next to the Bruckner Expressway for the last umpteen years, and that is where he is proposing to build it. And it has its opponents.
To say the least. And I'll give you two major things. Listen, we've discussed it and people have discussed it all along. Number one, the process didn't, I don't think I'm even saying allegedly, we know it did not include any dialogue with Bronx officials, certainly the borough president, Congressman Serrano, and everybody else is saying, you know what, we don't want it here. The second thing, which I find particularly difficult, is that the Diego Beekman people had their own plan for that site. So here's a community group trying to do the right thing, developing their own community, putting together a development site, and then all of a sudden the area we're looking at, you can't use anymore. Those two things to me are just problematic at the get-go.
Well, sadly, Gary, this has all the earmarks of a classic Bronx story, where you have
I hate you.
a neighborhood group that has fought for years to try to do things its own way, and then government, at least according to the allegations of the community group, completely ignores community interests and community input, and with limited transparency goes ahead and does what it wants, regardless of the wishes of the people who live in the neighborhood. That is what the local people are accusing them of. And I just want to let people know, in case they don't know the context of, you mentioned the Diego Beekman houses. Diego Beekman Mutual Housing Association is a group of about, a collective of about 40 buildings and 1,200 apartments that remains one of the most violent crime concentrated areas not only in the Bronx but in the entire city, and there are many complaints locally that the precinct is overwhelmed by having to constantly be going to this neighborhood to respond to calls and violence and shootings on the corners.
So their solution was to reformat their way of living and handle it. Clearly a jail, whether you can debate whether or not it's going to be difficult in a community, it's not going to help that situation.
So
go ahead, finish what you're going to say. I got about 50 questions. We'll be here for 2 hours.
2 years. And so the Beekman people, as you were saying, for many years now have been working on an affordable housing plan in which they were going to create more apartments for people in our neighborhood who desperately need it, because just another classic paradox, we are in one of the most quickly gentrifying neighborhoods in the entire city, and developers are just moving in by the boatload and taking over what what few empty parcels there are, and residential towers, many of them being rented at market rate, are going up all across the neighborhood. And in the meantime, here are the people who live in this little corner of the neighborhood,
trying to save their own community so they don't get gentrified out, and now there's kind of a fence being built around it saying, no, you can't have that spot.
That is it. So they fear displacement, and they have had, and so the people behind Diego Beekman have, and along with the homeowners, many of whom the people in power are women at Diego Beekman, have been saying that they want to build affordable housing and small businesses and just upgrade the neighborhood in every possible way for the people who live there. And suddenly in comes the city, as of February of 2018, telling them, tell you what we're going to put here. There's going to be a jail here.
So now we do have other things to talk about, although, as I said, we could talk about this forever. The politics of it are fascinating because Melissa Mark Viverito's successor in that seat is Diana Ayala, and very often, it's not a hard and fast rule anymore, but the city council would then accede to whatever the home council member wants. Out of all of the elected officials in the Bronx or in the South Bronx, she's apparently the only one whose place it is who says, you know what, I'm not going to oppose this thing.
I think it's fair to say Diana Ayala is very much on a political island of her own. No one from among her council colleagues has come out in favor of her. They are, for the most part, loath to critique her directly, but at the same time, there isn't a single other council member who has said to her, Diana, you're doing the right thing, at least not publicly.
Right. Fascinating interplay.
And Diana Ayala is telling people, and there are many people on the close Rikers side of the spectrum who are saying, yes, we need to close Rikers, but the city says that the only logical place for the jail to be built is here because many of the opponents, including Borough President Ruben Diaz, want it built next to the courthouse, but the city says that it's just not big enough. The lot is not big enough for a jail, even though the jail is going to be so much smaller than even though there is massive decarceration happening in the city.
When and how will there be resolved to this? Or, frankly, we know the mayor is somewhere in the Midwest or wherever he is, but is the city just going to proceed because it can?
Well, this drama awaits us, Gary, because in fact, and it's almost as if you had me on specifically to try to unveil the drama.
Give me an answer.
Because tomorrow,
I want an answer.
you may have. I don't think you're going to have a partial answer tomorrow night, but Community Board 1 that takes in Mott Haven and Melrose takes place tomorrow night. Full board meeting at which they are going to make the announcement about their own, the first in the 5 phases of the Uniform Land Use Review process. They are almost undoubtedly going to say no because a prior subcommittee has said no. It moves on to the borough president. He is almost undoubtedly going to say no.
But these are all advisory notes. These are not, that's why I was saying, they're just going to move ahead. Listen, I want to get into another dialogue about the same neighborhood, and one of the opponents for the jail plan was Congressman Jose Serrano. He announced that he will be stepping down at the end of this term, and that means the door is open for a rather fascinating race. We know so far that Assemblyman Michael Blake has announced, Councilmember Reverend Ruben Diaz has announced, and I did an interview with Richie Torres, Councilmember Richie Torres, on Bronx Talk this week, and he all but announced. I mean, I think it's pretty clear. He said he's still examining it, but I think it's pretty clear. And then CNN wrote an article that maybe Marlene Cintron from the BOEDC, and they even mentioned the name Gustavo Rivera, that he might want to run. How do you see this? I mean, I'll just tell you real quick. I did ask Richie Torres, if you run, Marlene Cintron runs, Michael Blake runs, and Gustavo Rivera, do you split kind of a left-handed vote, a progressive vote, and then Reverend Diaz becomes the congressman? He said, look, we're all going to run. It was basically his answer. What do you think?
So, and
I've laid it out there for you.
The only obvious answer is that it's fascinating. Nobody knows how it's going to play out because, of course, Diaz represents the more conservative-minded Democratic presence of the Bronx, which is considerable, and he still enjoys enormous support despite his controversial stances on homosexuality and a variety of other social issues. And on
Well,
the other,
let me just interject, because he runs senior citizen centers, and
Yes.
he does very good with constituent services, and he seems to care about the neighborhoods. And he's the guy, I think even in your paper there was a picture of him, or in the Bronx Times, cutting a ribbon on a park. I mean, these things resonate, and if people see eye to eye with him socially, then maybe there are others who don't like him, but he's got to follow him.
Ruben Sr. has an enormous presence in our neighborhoods. Everybody knows the cowboy hat. And, Ruben walking down Southern Boulevard, 163rd Street, with the larger-than-life cowboy hat, and the boisterous vocalizations of his controversial views. He's certainly a formidable presence, and the simple fact that he is a Democrat who's way over to the right by no means that he is a marginal candidate. On the other side, you have Taurus, as you were saying, Michael Blake, who's a former Obama organizer, and yes, it's been rumored that Marlene Cintron is going to run. So far, that rumor seems to be limited to a tweet.
Quiet.
That's right.
Quiet.
We haven't had any new noise since she tweeted a month or so ago.
What I find fascinating, and you know I've been doing this for a very long time in the Bronx, and I've seen all these races come about. In this case, if you were to ask, is Michael Blake qualified? Yes, he's quite qualified given his background, and et cetera, et cetera. Is Richie Torres qualified? He's quite qualified. Certainly just watch the program we did with him. He's very articulate, understands issues, passionate about public housing, which of course can be advocated for in the federal government. And if you add Marlene Cintron's name, who knows small business better than in the Bronx than she does, it's just fascinating to me. That's what it is.
Marlene Cintron would be the pro-business, the most pro-business out of all the candidates if in fact she enters.
Well, so I guess wait
she's
and see.
a long-term confidant of Junior, of Senior's son. So
yes, of course, and certainly his own political aspirations.
But obviously, an incredibly
wrap it up.
important detail. We're talking Ocasio-Cortez's neighboring district, congressional district, which is yet another variable.
So what I love here is that we brought Joe Hirsch in, and he didn't give us any answers. He just told us what was going on.
I just re-raised the questions.
That's it. Listen, Joe, always a pleasure.
Thank you, Gary.
What a treat to have Joe Hirsch here. We can't get him here enough. Thank you so much for joining us. Folks, that is going to do it for the Bronx Buzz. And you know what we have on Bronx Talk this week? You don't know what we have. There are controversies in UPK and how UPK is being handled, and we will address that Monday night on Bronx Talk through Memorial Week. Good night.